Thank you for joining our town hall meeting, which is sponsored by Senator Sharon Moriwaki, Councilmember Tyler Dos Santos-Tam, and myself, Scott Saiki. I want to thank everybody for attending and participating tonight. This town hall is actually kind of unprecedented because we have tonight with us the top law enforcement officers from the federal, state, and county level, and I'll introduce them in a couple of minutes. But obviously the topic that we'll be discussing tonight is crime, and I think for the elected officials who are here tonight, we know that crime is probably the top issue in our community. We know that residents have a lot of concerns about what is happening with crime in our very own neighborhoods, and we wanted to give the public and our constituents an opportunity to hear from our law enforcement officers about the status of what is happening at the different levels. So I'll just do some very brief introductions. We have U.S. Attorney Claire Connors, who has been serving as U.S. Attorney for the past couple of years. We have representing the Attorney General, Ann Lopez, is the First Deputy, Matt Devanch. We have this City Prosecutor, Steve Alm, who has been serving in that position for the past 4 years. And we also have Honolulu Police Chief Joe Logan, who has been the police chief for about a little over a year. So before our panelists introduce themselves, Senator Moriwaki, would you like to make some brief remarks? You can unmute. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to thank our august panelists because we've never, as Speaker said, never had this lineup before. And I want to thank all the residents and people who are on the call because this is an important topic. I want to say when we hear from residents almost daily, it's intertwined with homeless and crime. So we have assaults, we have people with thefts and burglaries, and so how can we weed out those who need treatment versus those who are really committing crimes? And we've got the frequent flyers where we really need to do something about those who keep on committing the same crimes, catch and release. So those are issues that have come up almost weekly with us, and if we can see ways in which our panelists can address that and see what we can do to go forward. A lot has been done, a lot of alignment among the agencies that you see here, as well as the public defender, the courts, and community agencies. I just want to mention two programs that have been started and still in process. Is a grant that went to the Hawaiʻi Harm Reduction Center, which trains officers in mental health first aid and also in crisis intervention teams. And this is really important in terms of the community seeing some relief from the patrolling officers knowing how to de-escalate. And Major Lambert, who started the program, has said that one of the real tools that they use is carrying around fruit cups. So when the person is really acting up, they offer a fruit cup and then it calms them down and they're able to address some of the problems and even move them instead of citing them, moving them to bringing in outreach workers and psychologists to assess. And then if they're really severe and harm to self or others, being able to connect with the Attorney General's office to file a petition for assisted community treatment. And I think, it's separating out the kinds of problems that are in the community, but everybody working together in the prosecutor's office has been really good in terms of looking at how we look at other diversion programs, jail diversion programs, and safe and sound in Waikiki, but also looking at how we deal with the whole alignment from the courts to even the prisons, which now will be, as of January 1st, thanks to Attorney General, when she was Attorney General Claire Connors, of having the law enforcement department now separated out of community training and police officers in the state, as versus the corrections and rehabilitation program now being in a separate department so they can deal with the inmates, and then training the inmates in terms of work. So when they come out and they're released, that they're not going back to the street or committing crime. So I think it's all starting, but you know, it's in process. So I want to thank everybody who's on the panel who have been really contributing a lot to getting us to where we are. But there's, again, more work to be done. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Senator. Councilmember, can I do a really brief intro before you start? I wanted to mention that with the chief is Major Calvin Sung, who is in charge of District 1, which includes the Kakako downtown Ala Moana area. So thanks, Major, for being with us tonight. All right, Councilmember.
Thank you. Well, Speaker, that's actually a really good segue, because I wanted to acknowledge and thank HPD for being a really good partner, and especially Major Sung, who I see on a very regular basis in downtown, as well as with his community policing team. You know, they've been very proactive, and I've been very happy about that. I also want to acknowledge Steve Alm, the prosecutor. Their office has been really good to work with, and I'm very happy to say that you know, I've been a big supporter of their office and their initiatives, and that's because we have to work together. You know, Senator Moriwaki, I think, hit those major issues on the head. You know, we have a lot of issues in our district: homelessness, the sort of petty crime that we see, an increase in violent crime as well. And, you know, these are all things that neighbors should be concerned about. And we, as your elected officials, take them seriously. We, being in the downtown and Kakako area, you know, have our fair share of these issues, but we do have the main station there. We have the downtown, the Chinatown substation. We've got a lot of law enforcement resources in the area. It's just a matter of putting that all together. We even have the law enforcement memorial on the Civic Center grounds. I mean, all of these things come together, and hopefully we can get them in alignment to make our community safer. So I won't belabor my remarks any further, and maybe we can get underway, because I know a lot of the attendees have questions.
Thanks, Councilmember. Just to note, I wanted to say, just based on my years of experience, I feel like we currently have law enforcement is probably the most in sync that I've seen in a while. So I'm really also grateful for everyone who's here tonight, and for the jobs that you folks are doing and working together. So I guess, can our panelists, do you want to just do a brief intro of yourself and maybe explain your, you know, what the scope of your office is? So U.S. Attorney Claire Connors, you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you very much, Speaker. You've hit the nail on the head with respect to why all of us are gathered here. It's because we've all in law enforcement been working together for a number of years. I first started working with Steve about 20 plus years ago. Steve, that's how old we are. Obviously, I've worked with Matt, and the same thing with Chief Logan. So we all have worked together in many different iterations on the state, county, and now for me, the federal level. And we continue to do that. That's a very important message for all of us to convey to the public. Right now, as the U.S. Attorney, I'm the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer. So I work in the federal courts. I work with the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, Homeland Security investigations, and we focus on threats that are domestic. So they include our wars on the drugs, including illegal firearms, ensuring that our state and our county is financially secure. We focus on fraud crimes, integrity crimes. We also protect civil rights. So we have a very large mandate to work on hate crimes and to focus on crimes that prevent people from being able to engage actively in our society. That's a very large part of our mandate. We do criminal prosecutions. We also do civil affirmative actions. So we can ask for people to serve time in prison, but we can also ask for people to give back money if they've taken money when they shouldn't have done so. So you can see that sometimes in our COVID fraud relief, right? Sometimes we ask that they go serve time in prison. Sometimes we ask that they just give the money back. We also have some regulatory capacity. A large part of what we do is focusing on national security. So you don't see it in the press, but we work a lot of our hours of the day on ensuring that we're safe here, given our geopolitical framework. We do, as I said, fraud cases. Fentanyl cases is going to be on the rise. We're all going to talk a little bit about that. Meth continues to be our main issue. Child exploitation crimes, cyber crimes are becoming a more significant area with the intrusions and the breaches that we're seeing. But what I do want to emphasize again is that we all work very collectively together. HPD in particular has a number of officers who are task force officers with us. So they work alongside DEA, they work alongside FBI, and they are very, very important relationships that we have. We have great relations with the Attorney General's office. We work on integrity crimes with them. Some of the attorneys who are in the Department of the Attorney General and some of the prosecuting attorneys in the Honolulu prosecutor's office are designated as special assistants in our office. So they can prosecute under my authorization cases in federal court, which is something I support, because if we're proceeding in federal court or state court, that doesn't matter. We just need to be working on behalf of the people in this state to be actively fighting against crime. So I have more that I can say, but that's it for an introduction. Thank you, Speaker.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, U.S. Attorney. Matt, do you want to explain the Attorney General's office?
Sure, Speaker. Thank you. And Claire, you said it very well. We all work together on this. We're all on the same team here. So we have a very good working relationship with our federal, state, and local partners. As far as the Attorney General's office, the Attorney General has the authority to investigate and prosecute all crimes under state law. But while the county police departments and the county prosecutor's offices handle the vast majority of street crime that occurs in Hawaii, our office focuses its attention on several specialized areas, and that includes welfare, tax, unemployment and Medicaid fraud, internet crimes against children, cold homicide cases, environmental crimes, tobacco-related crimes, and then also public corruption and human trafficking. And then we also prosecute crimes that can't be prosecuted by the county prosecutors for whatever reason. We also have some community assistance divisions. One is the Crime Prevention and Justice Assistance Division. They're dedicated to researching crime issues and reporting crime statistics for the state, developing education and crime prevention programs for our communities, and also maintaining grant programs that provide much needed funding for our state and local law enforcement agencies. We also maintain the state's criminal history information system, and that's used by federal, state, and local agencies to support their law enforcement activities. And we also maintain the state's sex offender registry. As far as things that we're focusing on right now, I just think of three things. One is our Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force that coordinates operations across the state to catch sexual predators who target our children on the internet. Those operations include our federal, state, local, and military partners, and they routinely result in the arrest and prosecution of these sex offenders, and they help keep our children safe. And thanks to the efforts of our legislators, we recently created the Special Investigation and Prosecution Division to root out public corruption at the state and local level, as well as investigate and prosecute human trafficking. These are very important issues to the public, and we're committed to holding these offenders responsible. And finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Maui wildfires, which have resulted in an outpouring of community support that's really inspiring. But at the same time, the disaster has created opportunities for criminals to take advantage of the generosity of the people of Hawaii. So all of our law enforcement divisions are working together to investigate crimes relating to the wildfires, and that includes fraudulent charitable fundraising, land speculators who take advantage of those whose homes and businesses have burned down, and also the unauthorized practice of law by unscrupulous mainland attorneys seeking to take advantage of those who have suffered the most. So we have a little bit of a unique mission here at the Attorney General's office, less focused on street crime because that is ably handled by our county police departments and county prosecutors, but we do these specialized kinds of cases.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Prosecutor Ong.
Yes, good evening. We end up working with HPD to do, the vast majority of criminal cases, both on the island, almost all the violent crime, and probably 70% of all the crime statewide, from traffic tickets to murder. But it's all about collaboration. Everybody, you're absolutely right. Everybody's on the same page with that wherever we can get the best bang for the buck is where the cases should go. But often we can work together, and that's really effective. for specific areas that are very high crime, we've started, programs like Weed and Seed and Safe and Sound Waikiki now. Those have been brought in, and it brings an even higher level of cooperation between our office and HPD. When we brought Weed and Seed back, the weed part back to Chinatown, the crime wasn't going to be as bad, we could tell, but the homeless problem was much worse. And so we created a new program called SUDA-FAST, for Substance Use Disorder Assessment Fast, with the idea that when HPD arrests homeless folks in Chinatown, they virtually all have mental health and or drug and alcohol problems. So what we do now is getting the whole system organized, so when they get arrested, they can be assessed at OCCC right away, pre-trial, and then trying to get them into treatment as soon as possible, because all of those folks are going to get on probation later on, and rather than being released to the streets to go back to their life or sitting in jail for months until their sentencing, we're trying to get them out sooner. And that's been very effective. We really work with HPD for identifying hotspots in other parts of the city where we work together, do immediate charging on cases. We've really upped the efforts in traffic matters. I think that terrible tragedy on Kapiolani Boulevard next to McKinley really got us to take a close look at how we were handling those cases. So there are no more deals on those kind of cases, multiple no faults and multiple driving without license. We're asking for jail on the third offense. It's causing more work in court, but that's what we all get paid for. We're working together with the judiciary and the Department of Health and public defenders in a new program called Jail Diversion, where for the seriously mentally ill, they often commit a lot of petty misdemeanors and misdemeanors. If they can be diverted out of the court system to be treated for their mental health, I think they can really reduce a lot of the work for HPD in trying to do that. And the ACT program that has been brought up, I think that can be a real help. Connie Mitchell does great work, but I think we got to get government involved. And that assault second now, if a senior or kupuna 60 years or over gets assaulted, we can charge that as a felony. So it's trying to be creative, it's trying to be smart, trying to work with the judiciary, encouraging them to take felony probation more seriously, because that's a real important part of keeping Hawaii safe, and it can reduce the number of people failing at probation and go to prison. So it's good to work with everybody on the panel, and I want to thank the legislators for their support in all of this. And a final shout out that you guys passing that law on catalytic converters, where it's now a felony, and they have to do all this registration when they try to sell a catalytic converter to a recycler, has reduced the number of catalytic converter cases from thousands down to 100. So there's times when a law can really make a difference, and that's a good example.
Okay, thanks, prosecutor. Chief Logan.
Aloha, thanks for the opportunity. The Honolulu Police Department, we work with our federal state partners and our military towards issues and concerns surrounding criminal activity, community engagements. So right now, let me just cover quickly the vision of the Honolulu Police Department is let us be revered in our mission to guard the people. So I've changed two words in that mission. One is revered, which is an emotional attachment to the mission, which is guarding the people. And I use that specifically instead of protecting. Within that terminology of guard is to protect, but guarding is also, in my view, is a way for everyone at the end of engagement is to go home. Now, one individual may go to jail first, but the engagement is how do we de-escalate? How do we control? How do we help with crisis intervention? The Honolulu Police Department, our job is fourfold. One is we deter crime. Number two is we investigate criminal activity and then apprehend offenders. Number three, we maintain social order. And then the last one is we enforce state laws and county ordinances. And so that's our mandate. And so that's what we do. We do that with the department broken up in 8 patrol districts, making up the entire island, from District 1 being specifically for all of you, the downtown Alamoana area, Kaka'ako, and then branching out, encompassing the whole island. Within the patrol districts, they have certain resources that we provide. They have a crime reduction unit, and they have a community policing team, and then a plethora of other things that we allow or provide resources to the majors or the commanders for them to help reduce the crime and focus on those activities that the community finds issues, concerns, and how do we work together to find solutions. So we provide resources to each of these 8 commanders, and those commanders identify what may be specific to their areas, and they use those resources to combat that. I also have a criminal investigation division that works closely with our federal and state partners on investigating felony activity, but also sex crimes, abuse and domestic violence cases, and a plethora of other things. I have a narcotics vice division that works on gambling, drugs, and then human trafficking with our federal partners and state partners. And then I have a specialized services division which handles barricades, suspects, and things of that nature. And then a training division to help us train our officers, our recruits, into the officers that are hitting the streets and working for all of you. There's a couple other, there's finance and an HR division that work diligently. The other key component of the Honolulu Police Department is our communications division, which is our dispatchers and our 911 call takers. And that's kind of the genesis of what starts usually an emergency call or a call for service of our Honolulu police officers and begins the ball rolling, and so all of that. We are just one leg of this multi-legged stool of the criminal justice system. So our main focus of the Honolulu Police Department is, as we deter crime or apprehend criminals, our job is to enter them into this system. And what happens to it after that is the system is responsible for taking action from that point on. And so that's the major role of the Honolulu Police Department and how we engage with our community through our community affairs division and the community policing teams within each one of our districts, and find solutions to problems within each community. So with that, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Thanks everybody for your overviews. So far, as far as the format for the remainder of our town hall, we'll be going through questions from residents. We did receive some questions in advance of the town hall, so we'll basically be reading those questions off tonight. We also have, for those of you who have a question and haven't submitted it yet, you can submit it tonight through the chat function, which is on your screen. So please feel free to send that in, and we will read off the questions. And we'll try to direct the questions to the appropriate agency tonight. So we'll do that. We'll do this. Why don't we start off with Senator, do you want to start off with the first question?
Sure. I think this is a general question for everyone. What is law enforcement? What is your kuleana? But you probably all kind of said what your lanes were. So unless anybody wants to expand on what you see as law enforcement versus, I guess, other areas.
Well, Senator, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. Our 4 responsibilities to deter crime. That's a law enforcement issue. That's a law enforcement role and responsibility. And then investigate and apprehend, and then maintain social order. So those things we do on a regular basis. We're out there every day, 24/7, working for the community to ensure that they're safe. Just to go back to an earlier talking point that, crime within the city and county of Honolulu overall is down in the categories that we measure based on murders, violent sex assaults, violent assaults, and robberies and the like. And so based off of those timings, are there pockets within divisions and districts where crime might be on a slight rise as compared to last year. Yes, there is. But overall, in the city county of Honolulu, we still remain one of the safest cities within the nation. And crime overall is down. As the prosecutor said, just with catalytic converters, it's down 93%. And so that's an amazing thing, thanks to all of you and what you've done. But our job is to do exactly those 4 things I stated, and that's really what law enforcement in this perspective does.
Right, Senator, I'd like to piggyback on that, you know, I think because people have social media, because the news tends to focus on crime, if you ask the person on the street, they're going to say crime is up. And really, crime is down in Hawaii, like for the last 25 years. Compared to the 90s, it's like half as many crimes are being committed. Now, as the chief said, your neighborhood may be up. If you're the victim of a crime, none of this matters. But those of us in law enforcement, we're trying to, you know, look at the big picture and trying to look at data and research to drive criminal justice policy, and not on gut feeling, not on we've always done it this way, but trying to be smart on crime. And so we got to focus on the crimes that are actually appearing, but people should realize that overall crime is down. And as the chief said, it's down in all these categories. It was low during the pandemic because people were staying home, stores were closed, but it's gone down since then. And this year, the murder rate is down lower than last year. You just got to project for the year. But as it is right now, it is lower. So we're all working together to make it as low as possible. One crime is one crime too many, but I think we've got our eye on the ball there.
Senator, if I could too, just add another perspective to everything that the chief and the prosecuting attorney have said. The law enforcement is also to ensure accountability, right? So when we talk about crime, that's definitely one way where we all feel it. But it's also important that when we talk about what the system of justice says, it's to hold people accountable and to ensure that they have due process, to ensure that there's a just and there's a fair outcome. But that's the other part. After chief has done what he's done and put them into the system has to work, and it has to be one that holds people who've engaged in bad actions accountable for what they've done.
Thank you. And I think if we circle back, so what is the alignment among the agencies? You have the prosecutor's office, the public defender's office, the attorney general's office, and how do we ensure that the enforcement goes all the way down so that we're not catch and release is what everybody is seeing and they're concerned about, but how might we close that loop so that there is accountability? Anybody?
Well, we're prosecuting as many people as we can prove the cases beyond a reasonable doubt. And we have to ask for the right thing in court. As the U.S. attorney said, accountability, it takes the courts as well as the prosecutors and the police bringing the cases. So we've told our deputies, even if you don't get the result you want, because frankly, we have a pretty lenient judiciary. And they care about people. They're bright. They want to help people, but part of their job under the Hawaii revised statutes is deterring crime. It's holding people accountable, having a just punishment for a violation. And I know as a judge, I was the hardest sentencer, on the courthouse. Even then, it's probably only 35 to 40% of people that I thought should go to prison, not jail, but prison at sentencing. That means most people are going to be on probation. So you got to do that right. And probation doesn't work very well now. But we got to ask for the right things. We got to try to hold people accountable, so that it might deter them or deter others, and people will have faith in the system.
Okay. Can I segue this question? So first of all, I want to correct myself. Earlier I said residents can submit chat questions, but it's not the chat function, it's the Q&A. So use the Q&A function for your questions. But I think this question was already answered, prosecutor. It's basically about the enforcement of basic driving laws.
Yeah.
And how we can better enforce these laws through citations and prosecution.
Right. I think that's very important that, you do the small things and it affects the big things. And so, we have a lot of, a lot of people, if they get a citation, they pay it through the mail. But there's some people that commit offenses over and over and over, and maybe a little time in jail would make them rethink that. And so for things like the multiple driving without licenses, the multiple no faults, and we are also trying to work with the insurance industry to get a better real-time understanding of, does somebody have insurance? Not just that they have a card, but is it active today? And so, the police do a good job out there in the street, but we got to try to hold people accountable. And for some cases, a little time in jail might well get their attention and realize the system is going to take their behavior seriously.
Okay, thanks. And could I just mention that we do have already on the books a law that elevates multiple driving without a license offenses to a misdemeanor. So there is jail time for multiple offenses.
Right. And what we're doing now is the court's aware of this new policy of ours. But what that means is the judges want to make sure the defendants are referred to the public defender so they can talk to an attorney. So if they plead guilty for their first offense, it was a counseled plea, and a second offense, because we'll be asking for jail on the third offense. So it is clogging up the calendar some. People have to come back, but that's what we all get paid for. So we don't mind doing that. And I'm sure the judges will be embracing this role as well.
Okay. We have another question. And it's about, it's focused on the restricted access to Ala Moana Beach Park for the Hapalua Half Marathon. But I think the general question is, because our community sees so many parades and marathons, and then roads are blocked off in the mornings, usually Sunday mornings, for several hours. Residents experience, they're not able to basically leave their homes or their units during that time period. So I think the general question is, how do we alleviate the situation where access is blocked off for several hours at a time?
That would be HPD. Chief or Major?
I can answer that
It's
question.
necessarily an HPD issue. I think it's more of, the permitting through the city, and allowing all of these things to happen. They're great events, don't get me wrong. There's a plethora of things happening. But even in Waikiki, people are complaining about, hey, you put on multiple Ho'olaulea is shutting down Kalakau, and then people can't get to other venues, other things that people, on the side streets, because they're all congested. So restaurants and businesses are losing money. And so there's a lot of issues and concerns, and we're only there to enforce, to make sure people, do what they need to do and keep people safe, not necessarily the approval process of these permits that are required. Major Sung, you had something?
Yes, Chief. Actually, so usually the event organizer has a complaint hotline, and also that there's a media release regarding those big events. So, and then also as long as you're not driving, usually the pedestrian access is allowed to those parks during those times also. So if you can plan it ahead, or if you can just call the event organizer in advance, and you can just definitely find out what the access, what time is not allowed, and all that stuff. So usually there's a news media release is posted way prior to the event. So as long as you plan it ahead, and then you should be able to have access to the park and then use the park. I mean, Ala Moana Beach Park, for example, you need to go to surfing or in the morning, and then as long as you're not driving, you usually allowed to access the park and the beach access.
Major, I think one part of this question is that there is a certain period, like 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Expect delays, but what the person is saying is there's no access from 4 to 6 a.m. So it's prior to the period when you are designated as a permittee to have, the roadway blocked. But what if it's before that time and you're blocking the road? I think that's the question, is can you enforce against that when they don't have a permit for that period?
Yes, but in order for the race to be organized and then properly blocked off, so they need to drop off the cones, and then those things that need to be set up prior to the event. So sometimes they block it off way prior. Like for example, the marathon start at 5 a.m. in the morning, but usually you get blocked off prior to those event starting time. So because they need to set up the tent, they need to set up the porta parties and all that stuff. So those items need to be set up prior to the event. So as long as I believe, as long as you're not driving into those the areas, I mean working areas, you should be able to have access. Usually if you're riding a bicycle or if you're like doing the pedestrian access or just walking onto the beach park, and you're allowed to access the park.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember, you want to take the next question?
Sure.
You want to ask the next question? Sorry.
Let's see. I don't have the list of
Oh, okay.
questions, but I'm happy to.
Let me read this. It's it's a police
Okay.
question. What are some proactive measures that the police departments are doing to keep tax-paying citizens safe while walking from point A to B? I think there's been some incidents in Kakako where pedestrians are basically assaulted while they're on the sidewalk. So, for example, someone who's riding a bike will just strike them as they're walking on the sidewalk. So that those kinds of incidents have occurred in the past.
Right.
But Chief.
Yeah, so one of the pillars of the strategic plan that we're implementing is creating safer communities. So how do we do that? And really that's addressing violent crime through the use of and integrate technology. So how can we better use data and data analytics to identify hotspots, issues and concerns that are locations where people are whether being assaulted are they reporting the incidents? And if they are, then we got to capture that data. And then from that, the commanders in the districts can use that information to either run operations or some kind of better enforcement or into those hotspot areas so that they can address those specific things. It's kind of a generic question. Like I said, Honolulu continues to be and is safe. And so while there might be pockets of things that happen, our patrol officers are, driving around the area, they're in patrol, they're trying to deter crime as best they can. However, once in a while, there are things that we can't be everywhere all at once, right? And really it's about one, like the prosecutor, Steve Alm said, is we got to hold people accountable. And so those individuals who may have committed crimes before, as long as they're being held accountable for the crimes they have committed, perhaps they're not on the streets in an area to assault people. And so it's all part of this multi-legged stool and working together.
Okay. We have a question. This is a homeless related question. How much manpower on average is in the area of Kakako and downtown to remove homeless or mentally disturbed? And it relates to a second question, which is there a law that can prevent panhandling at intersections?
Well, I could address part of that. HPD has done a great job in Chinatown arresting the chronically homeless people for drug possession. Because, again, if people are sleeping on the street in Chinatown, they virtually all have a mental health and or drug problem. And if you walked up to them, they have a ice pipe sticking out of their back pocket. They get arrested by HPD. If you ask them, do you have a drug problem? The answer is no. Do you want to go and need to go to treatment? The answer is no. So the leverage of the criminal justice system is really going to be important to try to address that. So I think it's one of the major reasons why Chinatown has so few homeless now compared to 2 years ago. Because part of that is HPD arresting folks for drug possession and then trying Sudafast and other things, trying to get them into treatment. Because unless they deal with that behavioral health problem, they are never going to stay off the street. You can arrest them and get them off the street, but there are all these other programs like the ACT program that makes people take medication or get hospitalized. The CORE program the city does was very important with the ambulances trying to set up, relationships with people. more than a year into things and a lot of homeless were already gone, the mayor then convincing River of Life to move their feeding operation away from Mauna Kea and Pauahi has been a real help as well. And the jail diversion program for the serious mentally ill is having growing pains. It's hard to get a program started, but Miami has had great success with that. And a dozen of us went to see what they're doing. And we're convinced that can be one of the answers down the road. But HPD, I know, you know, Senator Moriwaki convened a group that many of us were part of, trying to come up with solutions. And I think everybody's, you know, there's so many groups that are trying to help out with it. Health and Human Services with Heather Lusk, folks from the mental health Kokua, the city, the Punavai rest stop, the new facility that's open behind it. There are really a lot of people helping out with it. And I think they're starting to show progress.
You know, if I can just talk about assisted community treatment for a second. It's a program that can help people who are mentally ill. They need their medications. It's not something that's traditionally thought of as a law enforcement activity. And the law has traditionally been a little bit restrictive, and it requires like a healthcare provider to file a petition in family court. They don't know the court system. So the legislature in this past session passed Act 153, which actually allows healthcare providers, psychiatrists, and advanced practice registered nurses to request the Attorney General's office to assist them in preparing and filing those petitions with the family court. And the hope is that, you know, we know the court system, we know the family court system, we can navigate that. They provide the medical expertise, and together we can more effectively help these people.
Okay, thanks. And just as a reminder to everyone that a few years ago, the legislature funded the construction of a new tower at the state hospital in Kaneohe, and that tower opened up a couple of years ago. So we have an additional about 199 beds at that facility, and hopefully that's where we'll be able to divert those who have mental health needs. I think there are a couple of homeless related questions. So one was on enforcement against panhandlers, and also enforcement against drug use involving obviously homeless people.
I think I see Major Sung wants to answer the panhandling at intersections. Major, is that?
Yes, Senator. Actually, there's a law against the panhandling on the public area. So it's actually disorderly conduct, HRS 711-1101. So it impedes, obstructs for purpose of begging or soliciting the items, any person in the public place, any place open to the public. So disorderly conduct is a petty misdemeanor. If the defendant intention is cause substantial harm or serious inconvenience, otherwise it is a violation. So definitely, if you see somebody panhandling and then blocking the traffic or blocking the pedestrian access, definitely call 911, and we can have the officers go out there and then either issue the citation or we can address the issues right there and then. So definitely call 911. There's a law against that.
And we would encourage people, do not give money to panhandlers. The research shows most of it goes to drug and alcohol issues. I had guys in my court who say they'd start at the marketplace with a big cup, walk down to Jack in the Box at the intersection of McCully, that'd get $50 by then. They could buy some food, buy some drugs, and that's what they did every day. So when groups go to these areas and feed people, whether it's at Kapiolani Park or other places, they're doing it out of the best of intentions, but it's not helping the situation because the homeless folks will stay there if they're given that kind of sustenance. We want to encourage them to go to shelters, to get help, to, you know, follow the law, you know, and a lot of people don't want to go to shelters because shelters have rules. They can't bring their dog, they can't smoke, they can't drink. They, you know, and part of it is they don't have the right to block the streets from everybody else or use parks or other areas. And I'm full of compassion. We want to help people, but, you know, they gotta do their part with this too. Senator,
you want to see the Mother Waldron Park?
Yeah, it's again to HPD, why won't HPD get rid of the meth dealer who comes to Mother Waldron Park in Kaka'ako twice a day? I've reported seeing him make transactions of meth twice. I've seen him walk past my window holding up a baggie of meth. What can be done about that? Why is there no enforcement? Major, I think that's you.
Senator, so I'm not going to be able to comment on that particular incident, but I can answer that question. But HPD, we're continue to asking the community to report suspicious activity, definitely, including the illegal drug use and dealing and gambling houses, so that these issues can be properly investigated. And then HPD takes all the reporting of illegal activities, such as narcotic use, and it will conduct the investigation as needed by our patrol officers, as well as our narcotic and vice division, who routinely conducts the operation targeting those drug dealers based on the community complaints. And then also any non-emergency illegal drug and gambling activity can be reported directly to our HPD narcotic vice by calling 808-723-3933. That's the narcotic vice hotline. And also they can report it online at honolulupd.org. And then actually, if they wanted it, they can attach the picture on that online reporting also. So we're definitely taking the complaint seriously, and then we work with the narcotic vice. A patrol unit can do so much. I mean, the uniform officers can go out there and check the area, but definitely based on the complaint, we do conduct a joint operation with our patrol and also the narcotic vice division, and we address these issues.
So it seems like this is repetitive. So is this narcotics hotline the better place to call, or is it 911 or 311, or what would you suggest to our residents?
I would suggest, if it is non-emergency, definitely call that narcotic vice hotline. That number is 808-723-3933. That's the best number to call. And then if you get the voicemail, definitely leave you don't have to leave the contact information, but if you leave the contact information, officers can call you back and then definitely get additional information. So it's up to you if you can leave the information, or you can stay anonymous and just report the complaint.
And then just moving to the prosecutor, what happens thereafter if they do have the report coming in? How do they make sure that it gets prosecuted?
Right. Well, the police arrest a lot of people for drug possession. It's called promoting dangerous drugs in the third degree. And I've heard, other states. Oregon has legalized the possession of all drugs, which I think is a disaster in Portland. But other states have made it a misdemeanor. We would absolutely disagree with that, because those folks in large part need treatment. But that means HPD arrests them, we prosecute them. Most of them are going to get put on probation, and that's appropriate. But then you've got to monitor them correctly on probation so you can help them stop using drugs. And right now, that's not happening. So, it's an area the judiciary, I think, really needs to step it up, because you can help people with drug and alcohol problems, but the leverage of the judiciary can be extremely effective if it's done the right way.
And let me jump in here. So I think part of the challenge is, the community, whether they go to Mother Waldron Park or are walking down the street, observe drug use or what they believe to be drug use. By the time they call 911, this person is no longer actively smoking whatever it is, or they've kind of gone away. And I guess the frustration is, they see this all the time, but in order to get a prosecution, and remind me if this is the case, I mean, you need somebody witnessing them doing it, and that's a challenge. And even to stop somebody who matches that description, I mean, you need some sort of pause, right? So you're
absolutely right. So you need a witness. So we would encourage people to be willing to be witnesses. What the city is doing in putting the cameras in Chinatown is great, because then you don't have to observe the drug transaction right at the time. If it's recorded on video and police officers can identify the folks involved, cases can still be prosecuted after the fact. But you're going to have to get the drugs and be able to, so it's more effective for assaults and things like that. But otherwise, you got to catch somebody with the drugs on them. But I tell you, the police arrest a lot of people for drug possession. But I would encourage people to be willing to both report crime, and if they see something, to be willing to testify, because they may not have to testify if the defense knows that they're there and willing and able. But the more they can be willing to do that, it's really helpful.
Okay, we have a question about people who dump contaminants into freshwater streams on Oahu, especially in the Alawai area. What can be done about this?
No,
I'm not sure if that's a Department of Health issue.
maybe.
Yeah, I think it's more so a Department of Health issue, but again, if you see individuals dumping things, the one thing to do is, somebody, you've observed it, how do we report that? We could report that under a miscellaneous public type case and make the case and identify the individual, but we won't have the ability to determine what was dumped. We need experts from the Department of Health and other agencies to help with that. So while there may be a violation of ordinance or state law, but it might be under somebody else's kuleana, as expressed by Senator Moriwaki earlier, vice being HPD's kuleana.
Okay. Senator, do you want to take the next? There's like three. There's some homeless questions coming up.
Okay. What can be done with the growing homeless population? We've kind of covered this already with the mental health issues. And what can we do to protect ourselves when in public areas like bus stops, other than carrying mace or pepper spray? Any comments to that? I think we've addressed it with Prosecutor talking about what you're doing to the fast mental health.
Well, building on what the First Deputy Attorney General said, the ACT program is good right now, but it can be better, because right now the petitions have to be filed in family court out in Kapolei. So, I think we'll be getting together. We'll be making recommendations to the legislature, because it'd be good to be able to file them in all district court and circuit court as well. But also they need, more funding so this team can identify. And what it means is, if somebody is a danger to themselves or others, they can be subject to this law. And sometimes they agree to it. And they're very good injections now for schizophrenia. They can get an injection once a month. And some of the homeless folks agree to do that rather than having to go to court. But if more funding from the legislature could be done, and if somebody's lying there in their own filth, they are a danger to themselves. So you can't walk around this city without seeing people that would qualify for the ACT program. And I'm really glad with what the legislature did last year, as Matt Devanch pointed out, but it could be made even better and become even a bigger part of the solution.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I may, Senator.
Yes.
These are community problems. These are community issues, and we need to work together for solutions. But let me just say that homelessness in and of itself is not a crime, right? That's just because you're homeless walking down the street or sitting at a bus stop doesn't mean you're committing a criminal activity that involves a law enforcement officer. It may involve another professional that can help them with either their mental illness issues or drug and rehabilitation of alcohol and other things. So maybe they need to see experts in that term, but not necessarily a police officer. And the individuals that are involved, if you see a homeless person, just because you see them there doesn't mean they're criminals, and we get involved in that aspect. Although we're very concerned of your safety, and so being careful of where you are in that environment, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of where you are in conjunction with the bus stop if the individual is at the bus stop, and make sure you're standing with other people in a lighted area so that you can, that's part of your safety.
I just want to insert that some of your districts have been through mental health first aid and crisis intervention team training, and that has been really helpful in de-escalating, but also connecting to the right professionals when needed out in the street. And I think more of that. We're looking at adding more of that to support you folks in doing that. HPD doing that, or all across the enforcement community in the state. But
And
it's-
let me make a plug for the CORE program as well. To Chief Logan's point, a lot of these people, don't need a police response, but need some other professional. And CORE has been really effective, I think, in Chinatown, and hopefully we can get that expanded into other areas. The phone number for CORE, especially for those of you on the call who have kind of persistent homeless, whether it's in front of your building or, in the park, it's 768-CORE, C-O-R-E. That's 768-2673. So it spells out CORE on your phone. They're really proactive. I see them in downtown Chinatown very often. We want to get them also into Kaka'ako a lot more. But these are the people who really help to connect them with resources. And sometimes all it takes is a little bit of persistence, and eventually the homeless folks kind of get the message they need to participate in whatever's being offered.
Thanks for mentioning that program. I think they have a policy of trying to respond within three days. So it's been pretty effective. There's several homeless questions that we have here that I think have been answered. Questions about being able to walk on sidewalks, property damage, mentally unstable residents. I think we've answered those. Have we answered those questions?
Mhm.
Okay. So if we could kind of switch topics now, there's a question on the bike lane on Ward Avenue. Why was a bike lane created down Ward Avenue when bikers use the sidewalk and cars double park on the bike lane because there are no parking spaces on their side? This is a hazard for the pedestrian, the biker, and cart vehicles.
Sure. I'll take that question. We as a city, want to encourage people to not solely rely on their cars. And we also, all live in a community. So whether you're a pedestrian or a biker or a driver, there's certain expectations. So for this particular question, bikers should not be on the sidewalk, especially in a business district that is illegal. They should be in the bike lane that's where they should be. Pedestrians should also be on the sidewalk, not just starting into traffic. But drivers also shouldn't be parking in the bike lane. I mean, we all need to work together and be, reasonable community members here. The bike lanes are there to make it a lot safer. Since they put in the bike lane on King Street and South Street and Ward Avenue, the number of bicycle deaths and injuries has gone down almost dramatically. I do hear complaints from constituents about sort of near misses on the King Street bike lane because drivers aren't looking in both directions. Drivers need to look in both directions. But before this, if you remember 10 years ago, there would be news articles about bikers just getting plowed down, and we really haven't seen that. And so from my perspective, we all need to work together and respect the drivers and pedestrians and bicyclists. We all need to work together.
Can I throw in a question for U.S. Attorney Claire Connors?
Sure.
Because I think we see this in our neighborhood. How should people report drug houses and gaming houses?
Yeah, that's a great example of where we work collaboratively with HPD, and that task force that I mentioned is a great way to make it simple for the public. They call HPD is probably the best, unless Chief, you think otherwise, best idea, because you can be certain that we'll be collaborating, but they can also call the FBI. There might be reasons where they want to go straight to a federal law enforcement department, so they should call FBI directly. And FBI, DEA, HSI, all of those federal agencies all have some kind of jurisdiction to look into these houses. HSI might do more of a money laundering or some kind of a financial investigation. DEA might be looking at narcotics. They all do some kind of financial component. But if you want to go directly to a federal partner, FBI has a hotline. I'll look it up in a second. I know it's 566 something, but I can put it into the screen. But that's the best way to do it. FBI, those are our investigators. They will work up a case, and then they will be able to talk to us about the best way to handle it. But you can know that we very likely will be working with HBD and its investigative units on those types of cases too.
Okay, thanks. In that situation, do the feds and the city just kind of decide who should take jurisdiction over the case, the complaint?
In broad strokes, yes,
Yeah.
it does depend on the nature of the charges. We have some pretty big hits on the federal side when it comes to our federal laws. Anyone who doesn't know, we don't have parole on the federal side. So if somebody gets sentenced to a pretty substantial amount of time for committing a federal crime, they will serve that amount of time. So there are a couple heavy hammers that we have, which is why we want to collaborate and work together. But we do often, prior to taking any kind of enforcement action, have all those pieces worked out together usually.
Okay, thank you. Senator, the next question is your favorite topic, noise pollution.
Noise pollution. Yes, constant. What steps are being taken to address noise pollution? Cars have stepped up the noise levels to horrific levels, now simulating gunfire and without mufflers, often in residential areas at 2 a.m. in the morning. What can be done about that? And how is it being enforced, or can it be enforced, and how? I guess it goes to first to Major Sub.
Definitely call 911, and then we can send the officers out. But usually, in these type of cases, by the time officers get there, usually the vehicle moved on. So I think that that's why there's a safety check station for those vehicles, and make sure the mufflers, in compliance with the laws and everything. So, but definitely you can call 911, and we can have the officers go out there. And then officers are actually, the patrol officers and our traffic division officers, that they're proactively out there addressing these noisy mufflers, or some people playing the music loudly and all that stuff. So they issue numerous citations addressing those issues. So we'll definitely out there address the issues proactively. But definitely, if you hear it 2 a.m. in the morning and it is not reasonable, then definitely give us a call on it. Not just a car, but party noises and anything after hours not reasonable, give us a call, and we can definitely send officers and address those issues.
Well, so sort of going to what kind of noise and where is it coming from? These are noises coming from cars, so it's a moving target. So they report it, but the officer comes and says, okay, we didn't see anything. What might we do? I know we passed a law with some funding for noise meters, but that's going to be on certain streets. But what other kinds of steps can be taken to help you enforce for the residents?
Well, so noise overall, noise complaints like loud mufflers. So for car stereos booming from cars is one way that HPD, we have our jurisdiction over that type of noise. If we're within, I think it's 25 or 35 feet or 40 feet, you can hear that. You can hear the car shaking, you can hear the noise coming out. We can enforce that as an infraction and write a citation. For the people with loud mufflers, whether that's a moped at 2 o'clock in the morning, or a car or something like that, normally the Department of Health tests for loud noise in that aspect, and with the right devices or capability to do that, then the Honolulu Police Department, in conjunction with the Department of Health, until we get some kind of certified meters that could be used by our officers. We got to be careful of how we do that, and if that's something that we could do in a confined space, but out on the streets, it's very difficult. In neighborhoods at 2 o'clock in the morning, could we set something up and using those devices, whether the Department of Health and or HPD? There's a lot of work in that area. We got to figure out how to do that. I remember back in the old days when I was a solo bike officer, I would sit in an area off the side of the road, and this particular was Salt Lake, and the Department of Health would set up the meters, and if it went beyond a certain decibel, then I cited the individual based off of that. And so we need those kinds of devices to do that. But again, it might be Department of Health Kuleana in that type of noise, but how do we work that backwards into what HPD is going to do in this future as we progress from that?
Like last session, we had a bill where HPD, where the Department of Health would have the meters, and we put money in the budget so that DOH could train HPD on the meters and calibrate it. So I don't know if you're still open to that, but that is on the books, and DOH is willing to help because they can monitor, but they monitor stationary like construction, but not moving targets or not street performers, in Waikiki, which was a big problem. So if you're open to that, I'd like to see if the Department of Health can follow up with your office and see what can be done this coming session, because it was in a bill, but it wasn't passed last session.
Yeah, so that's a capability that we could provide to the district commanders and our traffic division and see how could they implement something like that to help in those hotspot areas where it might be happening more frequently, so that what we don't want to do is sit out there for 6 hours and nothing happens, right? And then it's happening in another neighborhood. And so we need to, through data, through analyzing that data, where these complaints are coming from. So one, we need people to call in. So it's okay to call in, even if it's a moving target. So we have a general location, and then we can work those things through the district commanders so that they can take the appropriate action.
Well, and we are working with the city council, with Chair Waters and HPD about one of the types that causes people a lot of grief, and that's boom boxes and loud music from cars. So hopefully in the near future, there'll be a new ordinance around allowing HPD to charge people for that and then seize the boom box as evidence for an upcoming trial. So this is a really difficult area. It's boom boxes is one area, the vehicles, mufflers are another, and then in certain parts of town, private garbage collectors coming at 3 o'clock in the morning and waking people up. So it's really irritating to people. So we got to try to address each one as we can.
Circling back to the mufflers, they are checked by DMV, but then people soup them up, after they go through inspection. Is there a way to, either a law or some way that we can enforce that if they are loud, you can stop them and see if they have changed their mufflers, or, so that would be one way of citing them, whether it's, not, maybe a civil penalty to make it easier to stop them.
Yes, it is considered as a motor vehicle muffler like modification. There's an HRS section for it, so officers can cite for that as a violation, and then fine is up to I believe $250. So it is a hefty fine. So officers have the tools to address those issues. Yes.
So we just need to enforce it then.
Correct. More officers out there, and then just address those issues proactively. So that's why, like our chief was mentioning about those complaints comes in, and we can definitely have the patrol officers kind of like a station at a certain area and catch those guys. I mean, that's a good way to catch those offenders in a particular time, particular area. For example, like Kakako, 3 in the morning, and then definitely we can have our patrol officers kind of stationed down there and then address those issues.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Hey, Senator, I know that last year you were instrumental in getting a new law approved to create a pilot program for a noise camera pilot project. Do you want to describe that?
This is the noise cameras, and we're working closely now with Department of Transportation, and they're now assessing where there are a lot of the traffic and noise complaints have come in. So they're looking at big highways like Ala Moana Boulevard, and they are in the process of also looking at the cameras that can. I think they're working on a task force to look at whether, when you take a picture of the noise, it is that car that's making the noise, because there may be several lanes involved, but it is in process. And there was funds, about $3 million over 2 years to put up some of these cameras in different locations in the state.
Okay. So everyone, if you haven't seen this yet, U.S. Attorney did post the FBI hotline, which is 808-566-4300. Okay, so that's the FBI hotline. We have a couple of questions which relate to self-defense. So we'll take them together. It's how can we protect ourselves and stand our ground? Can I make a citizen's arrest legally using my taser if someone is committing a crime and I'm willing to testify? What is the procedure for me to make a citizen's arrest?
I think for your safety and your own security, I would ask you to call 911. Prior to citizens arrests are difficult. You can protect yourself, absolutely. There are, a taser is something that you can, but really the taser, the way it's designed and utilized, I think even in the training, it's a weapon that you use and then allows you to get out of the area. So it allows you the freedom to get where you need to be. So the same thing would be if you kept OC spray in your purse and you use that to attack, to prevent someone from attacking you. And then it's for you to break contact and move away, not to arrest, because you don't walking around with handcuffs and you don't have the expertise or training on how to handcuff a person properly. Unless you may be a retired law enforcement officer or something like that. So, for your own personal safety, I would ask you, one, we're not a stand your ground state. So that is not, if you read the HRS under the chapter of justification use of force, you're really, you're supposed to, if you can retreat from, you do that first. If you can't, and it's not safe for you, then you take the necessary action, such as deploying a taser or OC spray, and then you you exit the area for your own safety. So I would not recommend a citizen's arrest. I would ask you to call 911 and allow us to do that. That's what we're trained to do.
And I would discourage people from using firearms in what they think is self-defense, because trained police officers, it's really hard to be accurate shooting with a handgun. And they're trained and they practice regularly that if somebody, pulls out a firearm and uses it, they're just as likely to hit a bystander as anyone else. I mean, as the chief said, if your life is in danger and somebody is using deadly force against you, you have the right to protect yourself, including using deadly force. But you got to be very careful with it. And as the chief said, if you see a violent situation, you see a dangerous situation, a law-breaking situation, call 911, observe things, notice things, be ready to be a witness, but be very careful about, using that kind of force yourself.
Okay. Let's see. Those were all of the questions that were submitted. I don't see any other. Are there any other questions? I think that was
I
everything.
have one from a constituent.
All right.
And this goes to HPD. And we're always saying that, you've got to be there. And so officers come when they're called and the perpetrator leaves or is leaving. What can the officer do? Can they go after the person, even if it's not on the property? He's not on the property anymore, and at least to explain to them that what they were doing was an infraction or was misbehavior act that could be a petty misdemeanor, or what can be done so that you can deter crime in the future, even if you don't cite them? Some kind of warning. What is the protocol for officers?
So it's all depending on the situation. I think you're maybe referring to a criminal trespass type of incident. So maybe the homeless person went onto the private property.
Or urinating or defecating right in the front of their building.
Okay.
And so they call it in, and when the officer comes by, the person crosses the street, so they're no longer on the property. What can be done?
So, for example, if they committed a crime and then they can report an incident, and then definitely the officer can take the statement from the complainant, and then definitely we can effect an arrest on that individual. If it is just they're on the property, they left the area, and then that's pretty much it. And then we can maybe officers can talk to the individual, and then just you're not wanted, and then we can witness, for example, the property manager issue the trespass warning. So those are the things, depending on the circumstances. Like if the crime is committed, for example, that person broke the window of the building, and then they committed a crime, and the complainant is willing to prosecute, and definitely we can take the statement and then apprehend that individual who committed a crime. So it's all depending on the circumstances. If it is just trespass type, we can just witness. It's a private property. The property owner need to issue the trespass warning to that individual. We can act as a witness for that trespass warning.
So even if they're a tenant and they're renting the property, it still is their property, and they could trespass the person if it's on the property.
If they're renting the property, that's difficult because they're living there. You're not going to be able to trespass somebody from your own apartment building, right? So that's going to be a little different issue though.
So if I have possession of the property I'm renting, am I considered the owner to be able to trespass something on the place?
You got to go through, file eviction notice, and you got to follow the other steps. You cannot just tell them the person is renting the property, and then
no,
comes in.
The person who's complaining is a renter of
Okay.
a person on the street doing, lewd behaviors like, defecating or urinating on his property that he's renting.
Yeah, I mean, even the owners or the property manager or
Mhm.
representative, such as a security, definitely they can issue the trespass warning, or they can file a complaint against that individual. Yes.
I think it's this kind of difficult situation when residents don't know what their rights are, and they call the police and the police don't report it, then they feel they're not being heard.
Yeah. I have a speed question. What is your position on recreational marijuana legalization?
That's an opening for prosecutor. Oh,
I'm glad you asked that question. Over the years as a prosecutor and a judge, I really focused on methamphetamine, cocaine, alcohol, the ones that are really causing people problems. But when I saw that the last year, the legislature, it had passed one house in the Senate, Senator Moriwaki, thank you, voted against it. And then it didn't go anywhere in the House. So we started doing research, and we discovered that in places, we've got like 10 years of experience in Colorado, and they have research showing there are more fatal car crashes. There are really bad environmental concerns. You have a more emergency department and admissions to hospital for kids. You get a greatly increased usage rate of all people. And the biggest, I think, part of the problem is when people think back in the day to their high school days where a joint of marijuana had 3% THC, which is the active ingredient. Now you go to a marijuana store, it's 20, 30, 40%, and concentrates are over 90. It is a different drug entirely. There are more weed stores in Colorado now than McDonald's and Starbucks combined. And they told us if you legalize marijuana, it would change the character of your city. So we're not against fun. We're not against people having a good time. People, right now the system isn't broken. You can, it's been decriminalized. You get a traffic ticket. It's not in court, equivalent of a traffic ticket. And we have medical marijuana. But one of the key things that surprised me was when we talked to the visitor industry, they said if you legalize marijuana, Japanese tourists and other Asian tourists will stop coming to Hawaii. That is frightening to me. Our economy is precarious. We're just clawing our way out of COVID. And now with the tragedy on Maui, we're really in a shaky situation. And I really think the legislators should say, let's wait a few years, see what happens in other states, and don't take a chance with our main tourism, with our main economic driver, and that's tourism.
Okay.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
Well, I would add from the law enforcement perspective is again, what the prosecutor said, it's not broken, it's decriminalized, so it's a violation now. It's not, we're not arresting and throwing people in jail for God forbid, long periods of time. Again, what's the issue we're trying to solve? I noticed in the paper this morning and the other day, people were saying, well, if we legalize marijuana, people will use it to sleep better. Well, you can use you can get a medical marijuana card, you can have medical marijuana and use that for insomnia or whatever medical condition you may have to help you sleep better. But in the long run, the average child's brain doesn't fully develop until they're almost 26 years old. And so we're gonna now legalize pot. And if you think an 18-year-old can't get alcohol or cigarettes today, or anybody less than 21, let me rephrase that, then you're not paying attention to what's going on in the city and county of Honolulu, because they can. And because they can do it, so we're not doing an excellent job at stopping. I mean, the current rules and regulations that are out there now are not, curbing young adults or young people less than 21 getting alcohol or getting vaping devices and so we're just encouraging more people at a younger age to start doing something, because now it says, well, alcohol is legal, cigarettes are legal, so why don't I just go do those things? And so we're just adding to an already problem, exacerbating a problem that doesn't exist yet, but could. And then we're getting carried away in the hospitals. These individuals that might be 12 or 13 that start smoking marijuana every day, their brain is not going to fully develop. And then they're going to be, are they going to be productive members of society, or are they going to be, members that we have to rely on? HPD is going to have to handle situations. They're going to go through mental crisis. They're going to be on the streets for very other reasons and be homeless because they can't keep a job. And so we're just exacerbating what already social issues we have. It's the same reason we don't legalize gambling. If we legalize gambling, you've got all the social ills that happen that are behind the scenes and nobody sees. The other part of this is we think this is going to answer the tax purposes, and we're going to get all this revenue from selling marijuana over the counter. Those states that legalize and cities that legalize marijuana, their black market just exploded because people don't want to pay taxes on buying marijuana. They're not going to pay that, so they'll buy it under the table somewhere else, or they'll grow their own and just smoke that. And so we're not solving anything by doing this. And sorry, it's a platform. I've been doing narcotics since I joined the police department in 1982, and whatever I can do is, slow or stop the legalization of marijuana. It's just going to add more problems to already social problems we got to deal with.
Right, and no state has been able to set up guardrails or rules. New York thinks they can do things better than anybody. They said, we're going to have a 15% THC limit. That went out the window as soon as pressure was placed on people. And so there was a study in Colorado that for every $1 in taxes they got, it costs the state $4.50 in other costs, like more kids dropping out of high school, more fatal car crashes, more emergency room visits. Every piece of new evidence about it is negative. And thinking that it's going to be a panacea for that. Keith Hayashi, the superintendent, is totally against it. He said, we have third graders who are vaping. And if you legalize it, you're telling young people, it's okay. We give the stamp of approval. It's just, you're too young. We're not going to let you do it. But as the chief said, how has that worked with alcohol? So anyway, we urge you to do the research, to talk to us, and let's not do this now. Let's not take a chance now.
Just want to ask the AG, I know you have a task force, and where is that, and what's happening there?
Yeah, so the Attorney General's office has traditionally been strongly opposed to the legalization of marijuana. We're in kind of a unique position because we wear a couple of different hats here. We have our law enforcement hat, and there's a whole host of law enforcement problems that come with legalizing recreational marijuana. There are also public health concerns with doing so. But at the same time, we have an obligation to advise the legislature, and we have a regulatory responsibility as well. So, we have a task force on this, and it's not anything that's new. It's an ongoing kind of task force. that's been thinking about these issues. And the tack that we take on this is that we don't support legalization at all. But if it appears to be the legislature's will and the governor's will to pass a bill legalizing recreational marijuana, and the governor wants to sign it, I think it behooves us to do whatever we can to make sure those law enforcement and public health concerns are addressed to the best that we can. So to that end, the task force, which is currently just within our office, is working on ideas on that.
Right, and I can tell you, the rest of the law enforcement community totally disagrees with this and is not going to help them, because that is surrendering to say it's going to happen. When Josh Green spoke to the whole law enforcement community, he said, if this ever does pass, which we hope never happens, they'll make sure implementation is at least a couple of years away. So then this kind of a idea of there's no such thing as a guardrail that's going to work when you're legalizing a dangerous drug, a drug that is not the drug that it used to be. So I appreciate what Mr. Devanch is saying about the regulatory part. We just don't think you should go there now. Look at it and don't pass it to begin with.
Okay, well, it's 7 o'clock. Thanks everybody for your replies on that question. We wanted to end this on a high note, so that's why we asked that question. So Senator and Councilmember, do you want to help close this?
Yeah, I just want to thank the panelists, us, prosecutor, attorney general, district attorney Claire Connors was our AG, and Chief Logan and Major Song. I mean, really, thank you very much with a really broad perspective. And I want to thank all the people with their questions and those who attended tonight. Mahalo.
And I want to thank everyone also for attending, especially, our folks in law enforcement as our elected officials here. We want to make sure we're supporting them. And then to those in the audience, the issues in the community, and now is the time to get in touch with Speaker Saiki and Senator Moriwaki, because they're developing the legislation for next year, and us at the council, we're year round. So, we're here with legislation all year long to hopefully work on some of these things. In fact, I have 2 game room related bills that are moving forward. And so, we're taking a lot of these issues seriously, but we need, public support as well to push on these things, but we're going to keep working.
So thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you to Senator and Councilmember for co-sponsoring this event. Thank you to all of the residents who have joined us this evening. We just appreciate everyone's participation, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. So thank you very much.